Here, I had actually gotten a bachelor's and a master's degree from Cornell, a master's degree from Columbia University, three
Wow.
prestigious Ivy League degrees, two master's degrees, and no one would hire me. I mailed out more than 200 resumes, and I looked for a job for a year. And I was even turned down when I offered to volunteer my services.
Wow.
It seemed everyone felt I was just too disabled to work, and I was devastated. I mean, I was just looking for the opportunity to show what I could do.
If you have ever looked around at your life and thought, this can't be it, you are in the right place. This is Flying Upstream, the podcast for people who refuse to live on autopilot. I'm your host, Kristen Medeiros. Each week, I sit down with people who questioned the rules, challenged the expectations, and chose a different path. Not because it was easy, but because it was honest. We talk about the moments that broke them open, the decisions that scared them, and the lives they built when they stopped doing what they were told and started listening to themselves. If you are done following the crowd and ready to trust your own way forward, stay with me. Let's fly upstream. Welcome back, free spirits. Today's conversation is about refusing to sit still when life hands you circumstances you never asked for. My guest today is Ken Konkin. More than 50 years ago, Ken broke his neck in a football accident and became quadriplegic. Doctors did not expect much from his future. Society offered him very little imagination for what his life could be. Ken disagreed. What followed was a life defined not by limitation, but by persistence, contribution, and choice. Ken became the first quadriplegic to graduate from Cornell University, earned multiple graduate degrees, worked for more than 40 years as an assistant district attorney, and built a family that many would have told him was impossible. This is a conversation about expectations, dignity, and deciding that your life still matters even when the path looks nothing like the one you planned. Ken, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me as your guest.
I'm so excited for this conversation. All right, I want to start with the moment that changed everything for you. When you were injured and you spent more than 9 months in hospitals and rehabilitation, what were you being told about what your life could look like?
Well, I had a lot of trouble getting information from the doctors and the medical personnel. They seemed reluctant to tell me much about my condition. But I was a patient at a rehab facility called the Rusk Institute, and they had put out a pamphlet that described all aspects of spinal cord injuries. And it was separated by the level your injury was. I was hurt in the neck between the fourth and fifth cervical. And it described what kind of movement I would have, and it would have some biceps and no triceps. And it was very accurate. And it would describe how it would affect where my level of sensation was. I have no feeling a few inches below my shoulders and down. And it was very accurate. It would describe what type of bodily functions would be affected. And again, it was very accurate. And it had a page on what type of careers I could eventually pursue. And the only career I saw for my level of injury was that someday I would be able to sell magazine subscriptions over the telephone. And I was devastated.
Oh.
At the time of my injury, I was a junior studying industrial engineering at one of the most prestigious colleges in the country, Cornell University. And now they were saying it seemed the best I could do was sell magazine subscriptions over the telephone. And at that time, there weren't even touch-tone phones. They were rotary phones, so I couldn't even dial a telephone. And I was devastated, trying to think, this is the best I could hope for. And I wasn't sure I could even do that. You know, and I had a number of roommates in the rehab facility. And they were hurt longer than I was. They had more movement than I had. That made it even more discouraging and depressing for me, because I started to think perhaps they're right.
I can imagine that it impacted your own mindset, seeing everybody else in the hospital kind of not doing too much. Do you feel like it kind of brought you down a little bit, or did you still have hope at that point?
No, it brought me down quite a bit. And to make it worse, too, this was approximately 20 years before the Americans with Disabilities Act took effect. So most facilities were not wheelchair accessible. You didn't see many, if any, quadriplegics out in public back then. So I didn't have any role models that I could look to for hope or inspiration. And keep in mind, Kristen, this was about 20 years before Christopher Reeve's devastating injury. Now, Christopher Reeve was a tremendous role model for us all, but this was well before that. And I was basically losing all hope that there was much that I could do.
Yeah. And for our listeners who may not know who Christopher Reeves is, he was the actor who played Superman and also had a significant injury. And when you saw this happen to Christopher Reeves, what came up for you?
Oh, I was devastated. I mean, my injury was tough enough for me to try and accept. I never wanted to see it happen to anybody else. And to happen to somebody that was so well known and famous that we looked to, for inspiration and motivation, and enjoyed watching him on the big screen, to see him suffer this injury, it was devastating. It was like reliving it myself for what happened to me.
Yes, I can imagine. Okay, so I want to go back to your journey. So when you returned to Cornell, as you said, it was like 20 years before ADA, the campus was not accessible. You had to be physically carried and bounced down steps just to attend classes. What kept you going during that difficult time?
Well, my family had been encouraging me every step of the way. They believed that since I still had my mind, my intellectual ability, that there was a lot I could still do. And I did my best just to try and ignore the physical limitations, and set my mindset that there was more I could do, and I was going to do everything I could to accomplish it. And I had a lot of help from my fellow classmates and my fraternity brothers and my football teammates, who all seemed ready, willing, and able to help me achieve what I wanted to achieve. And after a while, I felt like I'd be letting them down if I didn't do everything I could do to succeed at Cornell and make something of my life.
And you certainly did. For starters, you became the first quadriplegic to graduate from Cornell. And looking back at that, what did that achievement represent for you beyond just the degree itself?
Well, it meant that I could do things despite what everybody seemed to think. I mean, I think most people thought I was probably crazy to go back to Cornell, such an inaccessible campus, when I did. But I believed, and my family believed, I could make it work if I set my mindset right. And when I was able to accomplish that, I believed there was still a lot more I could do.
And after Cornell, you shifted towards helping others and you earned graduate degrees in education and psychology. Even with those credentials, you struggled to get hired. What did that period teach you about opportunity and bias?
It was so frustrating. Here, I had actually gotten a bachelor's and a master's degree from Cornell, a master's degree from Columbia University, three
Wow.
prestigious Ivy League degrees, two master's degrees, and no one would hire me. I mailed out more than 200 resumes, and I looked for a job for a year. And I was even turned down when I offered to volunteer my services.
Wow.
It seemed everyone felt I was just too disabled to work. And I was devastated. I mean, I was just looking for the opportunity to show what I could do, just the opportunity. And I know when I met with my advisor at Columbia, that was for my second master's degree. He told me when we first met that despite what they were teaching there, even people in the rehab field would be hesitant to hire me to work. So even he felt that there's a good chance I wouldn't even be able to get a job after my second master's degree. That was the mindset back then.
It, I mean, I know it was a different time. It shows in one sense how far we've come. And I think it's also important to recognize that we still have a long way to go in terms of awareness of all kinds of disabilities, ensuring fair opportunities. And, um, I had a conversation with my daughter recently. She's in second grade. And we were talking about people with disabilities, all kinds, right? physical disabilities, mental disabilities. And it's very difficult because some disabilities are obvious. You can physically see somebody is disabled and some you cannot. And how can you still give everybody a fair chance and treat people with kindness and respect no matter what? And it kind of occurred to me, the fact I was even having this conversation with her in the first place, is a pretty big deal. Like, I can remember as a child, my parents never ever would have said anything like this to me. There's so much literature out there and books and role models, including people like yourself, that bring this up and make sure that we're getting this in front of people who are listening, whether it's parents who are teaching the next generation or coworkers and peers, people in government and politics. It's all super important. So that's incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a very different time. And it was very frustrating because, as I say, you just didn't see people in my condition, somebody who couldn't use their arms as well as their legs out in public. And you certainly
Right.
didn't see them in the workplace. But I was very fortunate that I was put in touch with a person by the name of Dr. Henry Viscardi Jr., who was the head of the Viscardi Center in Long Island. And he was a tremendous role model. He was born with basically just stumps for legs, and he walked on artificial limbs. And he ended up doing great things. He became an advisor to 8 different presidents concerning people with disabilities. He
Wow.
wrote a few different books, and he opened a center that hired other people with disabilities. That was called Abilities Incorporated, which is part of what's now called the Viscardi Center. And he also started a school for handicapped children.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a tremendous form of encouragement to me to meet him, to apply for a job with his organization, and for them to finally hire me as a vocational rehabilitation counselor. And that changed my life.
That's amazing. It's always incredible for me to hear stories like where it literally takes one person to make all the difference, right? And then that put you on a completely different trajectory. And from there, you wanted to do more and more and more, right? You went to law school, you became an assistant district attorney, and you just kept going up from there.
Right. And it was interesting. He encouraged me to do more. And when he heard I was interested in law, he encouraged me to leave the center and go to law school. He even wrote a letter of recommendation for me. So I went to Hofstra University School of Law in Long Island, and I completed law school in the standard 3-year time period. I passed a very difficult New York State bar exam the first time that I took it.
Ooh.
I was fortunate to be hired as an assistant district attorney, and I began by participating in a very intensive 4-week training program where they taught us all aspects of trial techniques from a prosecutor's perspective. And I was so happy and encouraged and motivated to go to court my first day, and I couldn't fit through the swinging doorways in the courtroom.
Um,
They were too narrow for me to get through in my electric wheelchair. It was like, are you kidding me? After all I did, I couldn't even fit through the doorways in the courtroom. That's how I began my career.
mm. That must have been a difficult moment, knowing that you had worked so hard and put in so much effort, and then to not even be able to make it fully all the way in. Um,
It sure was. And I didn't know any other quadriplegic assistant district attorneys on Long Island. There certainly
yeah.
weren't any. But fortunately, at the Viscardi Center, they had helped me learn how to function in an office and have a desk set up and a phone set up that led me to believe I could function in an office. And of course, I had to convince myself I could function in a courtroom as well, because I didn't see quadriplegics in the courtroom. But they gave me the self confidence to believe I could do it.
That's so beautiful. In the same way that
Mm.
one person made such a significant impact in your life and changed the trajectory, you are doing that for someone else too, right? I love to think about that. You never know who is in those courtrooms watching you there, seeing you just being amazing and owning it as a quadriplegic, and that is impacting other people too. And you'll probably never know because somebody goes home, they tell their sister, they tell their spouse, whoever, and it trickles on. So that's just so beautiful that you're embracing that. Now, I know you often speak about maintaining high expectations for yourself and for others. Why do expectations matter so much, especially for people who are underestimated?
Well, I think people's performance often rises or falls based upon what others expect of them. And it's so important to keep your expectations high for yourself as well as for others. As I mentioned, my roommates in the rehab center didn't seem to be doing much with their lives. And I believe that was because they weren't encouraged to do so, that people did not have high expectations for them. And they seemed to not just rise above those expectations, but to go along with them. If nobody believed they could do something, they seem to fall in the mindset that maybe they couldn't. And I believe it's so important that you have that mindset that you could do. The district attorney who hired me, he was a person by the name of Dennis Dillon. I thought it took a lot of guts on his part to hire me because here, while nobody seemed to be giving me a chance or that opportunity, he believed in me. And he based his hiring decision on my abilities rather than my disability. You didn't
Mm.
find many employers back then who was doing that.
And you still don't. So kudos to that person. That's incredible. And I love even the next part of your journey. So you married your beautiful wife, Anna, and together you decided to have children. And becoming the father of triplet boys is something many people would have told you was unrealistic. Let's go into that phase of your life of fatherhood. What did fatherhood mean to you?
Oh, well, right now it's the greatest thing in the world, and I can't say enough about it.
Oh,
But when Anna and I first talked about getting married, she said she wanted to have my baby, and not just a baby, my baby. She
oh.
said she wanted to see a little Konkin running around our home. And I must say, this seemed impossible. I could not picture myself ever being a father. One, I didn't think it was physically possible, which it was through in vitro fertilization, which is how I became a father. But two, I didn't know how I could function as a father. I mean, I couldn't go out and just have a catch with my boys or, you know, do something physical with them or, try and wrap my arms around them when they were crying or hurt or help them in any way. And I really questioned, could I actually be a good father? And my wife, Anna, convinced me I could do it. I was an uncle. I had many nieces and nephews that she kept telling me I was a good uncle to. And if I
Mm,
could be a good uncle, she believed I could be a good father as well. And she kept
that's great.
encouraging me that I could be a good father.
That's so beautiful. At every stage in life takes a lot of courage for sure. And becoming a parent, oof, I mean, that's no joke, and especially to triplets. So I'm curious to know when you look at them today, what are you most proud of, both as a father and as a role model?
Oh, I have three incredible sons. They just turned 21. They're
Oh,
juniors
congratulations.
at three separate colleges in upstate New York. They're pursuing three different majors. My son James is studying renewable energy at the State University of New York at Morrisville. My son Timothy is pursuing a dual major at Syracuse University. He was majoring in both communications and public affairs, and he wants to be a journalist. In fact, he's doing this semester down in Washington, D.C. And my son Joseph is actually studying mechanical engineering at my alma mater, Cornell University. They're all doing great. I'm amazed that while they did everything together all through high school, they decided to go to three separate colleges, pursue three separate majors. They're all doing great in their respective fields, and yet they're staying very close with each other. They visit each other in school. They've gone to class with each other. They celebrated their 21st birthday with each other. And that just brings me so much joy when I see that they're remaining very close. And they believe, as I do, the importance of family. Family made a huge difference in my life, and they feel the same way.
That's a lot to be proud of. That's really amazing. And one of the things that I've heard you say is that your rebellion was refusing to sit still and do nothing. Where did that inner drive come from? Because it's obviously kept you going a long way now.
It sure did. That was from my family. They kept encouraging me that there was an awful lot I could still do and to never give up and to use my mind and my intellectual ability to accomplish things. Um, and they told me, don't listen to the naysayers. Don't listen to the people who tell you can't do something or that it's just too difficult. What's important is that you believe you could do it, that you believe in yourself. And I tried to take that to heart.
Mm.
And, it makes what a difference. And while you cannot always control, what happens to you, you can control how you react to it. And that's how I tried to lead my life. I can make the
Beautiful.
decisions. I can control how I'm going to move on.
Absolutely. I mean, you've clearly lived a life of service, mentorship, giving back, in addition to just an incredible career. What motivated you to write your memoir, I Dream of Things That Never Were?
Well, when I was first hurt, a friend of my Aunt Lorraine by the name of Al Meglin came to visit me in the rehab center. And he thought it could be very informative to others what it meant to have a spinal cord injury. People just didn't know. And what the rehab process was like. And he used to come to the center once a week and asked me to talk about my experiences. And he thought it would make for a good book. And for a while, he'd come once a week, and I didn't know how to write a book. But he said, just tell me what's happening in your life, and he'll write it down. And, then we'll go back. He said, start with what happened today, and then we'll go back and talk about your life in general. And then when I went back to school, I tried meeting with him sometimes on vacations. And after a while, even that stopped. And I actually tried to type a little bit myself. I mean, I've got a little bit of movement in my left arm, but nothing in my fingers or wrist. But with splints that I learned how to do, it was like typing with an eraser of a pencil, like typing with one finger, where I was really, really slow doing it. But on an electric typewriter, I was able to do a little bit. And then eventually, when I was married, my wife encouraged me to go back to writing the book. And when our triplets were asleep, when they were babies, which was not always at the same time, and we had to choose our spots, she would sit with me by the kitchen table and I would dictate to her and she'd try and write it down. And from the time I started writing the book to the time I finished was about 50 years. But we eventually finished it. But let me tell you where I got the title of my book. When I was first hurt and in the rehab center, 6 months after my injury, I was asked to testify before a United States Health Subcommittee chaired by Senator Edward Kennedy. And 8 days after my testimony, Senator Kennedy sent me a glass paperweight in the mail that had an inscription on it that the senator said his late brother Robert Kennedy liked very much. And the inscription read, "Some men see things as they are and say why. I dream of things that never were and say why not." And that's where I got the title of my book, I Dream of Things That Never Were, the Ken
Aw,
Konkin.
that is so cool. That is really cool. Really, really inspiring. Ken, this has been such an incredible conversation today. We're winding down here, and I've got one last question for you. For someone listening today who feels defined by what happened to them rather than by what they choose next, what would you want them to understand about possibility?
That there are endless possibilities, and it's up to them to find the possibility, to stay motivated, to work hard, and to make it happen. Not to depend on others to make it happen, but to believe in themselves. I know somebody once gave me a little cartoon caption of a pussycat looking in the mirror and seeing himself as a lion in the reflection. And that's how you need to believe in yourself. That's how you need to see yourself. Believe you're the lion, even though there's a pussycat there. When you look in the mirror, see yourself as the lion. You need to believe you can accomplish whatever you set your mind to. And while I do not believe I always made the right decision when I made it, I worked hard to make it into the right decision once I made it. And you've got to believe in yourself and work hard to make your decisions the right decisions for you.
Those are some really wise words to end on, Ken. Thank you so much for sharing your life, your perspective, and your hard-earned wisdom with us today. Especially thank you for reminding us that dignity, contribution, and purpose are not dependent on circumstance. I so appreciate how your story challenges assumptions without needing to shout, and it invites people to raise their expectations of themselves and the world around them. I am deeply grateful for your time and for the example that you continue to set for your community and the whole world. Thank you, Ken. If today's conversation sparked something in you, take a moment to sit with it. You can find more episodes and resources at flyingupstreampodcast.com. And if this show speaks to you, the best way to support it is to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who is ready to question the path they are on. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and always keep flying upstream.